Intro gets me hyped every single Sunday. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Extra Point Show, presented to you by Fantasy Points, where we are talking underdog player prop bets to help you guys win some cash this Sunday. My name's Nick, here with my buddy Major. Major, we're heading into week 10. We got a football game going on right now in Germany. Life's good, man. How are things?
Life is good, man. Finally back home. I do gotta give you a little flack here. You know you're on the East Coast there. Like when I was on the East Coast, waking up at like 9, 10 o'clock and doing the show, it's awesome. I'm waking up early as heck out here in the West Coast to come and join you on this show. I feel the difference.
I think people sleep on the fact that you're not getting enough sleep, man. That's for sure. That's for sure. And I know we're in different time zones. I'm up with the little one, but maybe not up and like in front of a camera right away. So
There
that's a
you
little
go.
bit different. But if you guys are tuning into the show for the first time, what happens here is we talk underdog fantasy player prop picks. If you are not familiar with Underdog, go check it out. You can go to the App Store, type in Underdog Fantasy. You can go to your web browser, Underdog Fantasy, download it. Use a promo code Fantasy Points, Fantasy PTS for a deposit matchup up to $100. We are talking pick'em picks for this Sunday. When you are on the app, you'll see a list of players in various player prop picks or stats for that specific player. You pick higher or lower, pair two guys, and you're in business. Very easy to utilize, and we're here to win you guys some money. So, Major, heading into week 10, we got some interesting games. Really nice slate today. What do you like as your first underdog bet you have some confidence in?
Yeah, my first one, I'm gonna go with Christian Kirk higher than 67.5 receiving yards. Kirk has beat this mark 5 out of 9 times this season. Last week, Kirk had a bounce back week versus Vegas, putting up 76 receiving yards. Jaguars will face a Chief defense that's ranked 24th versus the pass, giving up 250 passing yards per game. Um, yeah, man, the Chiefs defense is coming off of a game where they held Tennessee wide receivers to one catch versus the Titans. So, um, yeah, I think I don't know if that's the Titans play calling or if that was just a good defense. But Trevor Lawrence is playing better than he did last season. So I think Christian Kirk is going to kind of take advantage. This lines up to be one of those breakout games. If Trevor Lawrence going up against Patrick Mahomes, that's some big names there. Hopefully, he can kind of show off, and Christian Kirk can be the main benefit from that. From all those throws and touchdowns is going to happen today.
Yeah, I'm with you with Kirk, and especially with the game. We look at a Kansas City matchup, and the first thing the average fantasy fan, or I'm sorry, football fan, will think of is a shootout. Like the
Right.
Chiefs, it's a shootout game. And seeing Christian Kirk, I mean, he's been targeted at a pretty consistent rate. He's had a little bit of a dip here and there in his targets, but he's the number one target on that offense. You'll randomly see like Zay Jones or Marvin Jones Jr. Pop up and have some involvement. Evan Ingram, but Kirk's the guy, man. He's coming off of a great game. 9 targets. He's had games of 9+ targets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So I like this. I mean, you just put 2 and 2 together, like shootout potential game, number one target, just balled out last week, Christian Kirk. So I like that, man.
Let's get it. Who you got for yours?
So my first pick here, it is going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones, or as my buddy Ben behind the scenes calls him, a DPJ, higher than 48.5 receiving yards today. So I've been talking about him a lot lately in my content for fantasy. The guy's had at least 70 receiving yards in 4 out of 5 of his last games played. During that span, weeks 4 through 8, only 10 wide receivers in the league have totaled more receiving yards. So this guy's quietly showing some upside in that department. He's operating as the wide receiver 2 in Cleveland. The Dolphins are a top 10 matchup in fantasy points per game given up to wide receivers. And I mentioned fantasy just because it kind of paints the picture that for wide receivers, they can have a good day here. And when, knowing that and the defense probably focusing in more on Amari Cooper, I do like him against the Dolphins to continue to have some receiving yard upside and get 50 yards in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. DPJ is one of my dudes, man. Like I feel sad. I just traded him away in one of my leagues, and you know, it feels like I shouldn't have done it, but I'll trade him for his receiver mate out there, Cooper, and see how it goes. But yeah, like you said, he's coming on, man. Like he's quietly putting up, pretty consistent numbers throughout the season. So I'm with you on that one.
And I keep saying too about this guy, like for the fantasy world, because obviously we're talking player prop bets here, but a lot of people listening probably play fantasy. But number one, he's been like a touchdown away from everybody talking about him. Because when you score
Right.
12 fantasy points and then you add a touchdown to it, that's a big week. And then number two, he's going to get Deshaun Watson at some point this year, right? Pretty
Like week
soon. So
13.
yeah, yeah. So I mean that's two big, good signs there. But number two, man, number two. What do you like for today?
I'm gonna go with Jeff Wilson, higher than 61.5 receiving and rushing yards. And Wilson's debut in Miami was a success. He posted 12 touches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. Maybe the best start for Wilson from last week's playing, and the best stat for Wilson from last week is he played 49% of the snaps, like split in time, pretty much 50-50 with Mostert. Wilson faced a Cleveland defense that's given up 137 yards per game to running backs. So I kind of like what Wilson's doing out there. I kind of like how they're using him.
I do too. I think there's a lot of good signs versus Chicago last week for Jeff Wilson. Number one, both guys immediately had work. There was no hesitation to get Jeff Wilson involved in the game, and it was a very tight game. It's not like they were blowing out Chicago and then they were able to get him more touches because of it. It was a tight game. Another thing is he's the receiving back between the
Right.
two. He had I think 3 receptions in that game. So when it comes to a guy that is splitting the carries already, but he's getting the receiving work. You have to like that, especially it being his first game. Were you surprised that that it was that close in touches between the
Yeah.
two?
I kind of thought they were going to work him in. Most teams kind of slowly work people in a couple games, but they threw him in the fire right away, and he performed. So I think it's a good sign for him that he stood tall in that. Being thrown into the fire. 72 yards and a touchdown in your first game. To me, that sounds like a winning combination.
He was more. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do remember too that he was more efficient with his touches than Raheem Mostert. So that goes a longer way than people credit sometimes. Is what are you doing with the touches? If they both carry the ball 10 times, but one guy takes it for X amount of yards versus the other one, then maybe next game now it's leaning towards the guy that did better with what he got. But
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be that kind of dynamic. There is gonna be whoever has a hot hand. I kind of feel that's how they're gonna run that out there.
yeah, I do like Jeff Wilson this week. It's a good matchup. My second one here, I'm going to go Adam Thielen lower than 47.5 receiving yards. So
Mm.
Thielen has been on the injury report in back-to-back weeks. Earlier this week, he's been dealing with some sort of ankle injury, but he's cleared to play. So I'm not going to say he's banged up in this game. I'm not going to say he's 100% healthy, though. But Buffalo is a tough matchup. And not just because of what we know about the offense, but on the flip side, the defense are giving up the 5th least total passing yards this season and 4th least total yards this season. So they're a very solid defense. I think everybody thinks about them and Josh Allen and Diggs and scoring a lot of points, but their defense is good. He's been under this mark just 3 times this year, but he's not showing us a ton of upside. He's only averaging 52.3 receiving yards. So I'm saying he's going to be under 47.5. He's only averaging about 52 yards per game, and now it's a tougher matchup. So I feel like just knowing that on the year he hasn't really shown a ton of receiving yard upside. I mean, he's a guy that can score 2 touchdowns in any given day, but the matchup, the average of receiving yards, I'm going to go him lower than 47.5 here.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, and it kind of sucks because he's been so consistent his whole career. It's kind of feel like maybe Father Time is catching up just a bit. But do you think that with Hawkinson out there, you think it's taking away some of the touches from Thielen?
I thought that it could be, I think it takes a lot away from anybody else that was going to get work. I think it takes a lot from like KJ Osborne is going to be a guy that you can probably never play again in like the fantasy world and can never really count on, having a good game now. Thielen, he still had 7 targets. I mean, TJ Hawkinson was highly involved. So I think there could be a chance. I mean, Hawkinson had 9 targets last week. That's huge. Is there a chance that now the pecking order for targets starts to look like Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and then Thielen?
Right.
I think there's a chance they made an investment in this guy. I think Kirk Cousins with healthy Irv Smith here and there, Tyler Conklin last season. We've seen him give the tight end a lot of work, and now it's his best tight end he's probably played with.
No, I agree with that. So I'm with you on your assessment there, but it just hurts to hear Thielen name being thrown around like that, man. Come on, we
Yeah.
gotta show some respect for the OGs.
That's true. That's true. He has been a dog for the last couple of years, and
Yeah,
he's one of the hardest, um, one of the tougher nosed guy out there. It feels like every other game he gets banged up, and then he just keeps
exactly.
playing. But real quick question: we were talking about that Buffalo, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but any thoughts at all today on the whole like Josh Allen situation in Buffalo? I think he's playing, right?
That's the part that's driving me crazy because I picked up Case, what's his name?
He's
Case
Keenum.
Keenum, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I picked up Keenum, and if you look at if you look on Sleeper, he doesn't even have any points or anything
No.
designated to him. Like, so they don't even know if he's going to play. Like, I don't like they're keeping it under wraps like that. There's too many people out here trying to make money, just so they need to stop playing with people's emotions. But I, I think he will play. Hopefully he doesn't injure that thing any further because I think it can, lead to something more serious. So they should take his time, but usually when they kind of slow play it like this and try to keep everybody in suspense, like I think most likely he's going to suit up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I an hour ago they said Josh Allen likely to be active for Week 10. This on the Sleeper app, and then there's a sentence on here that's interesting because it says this is basically a strategic move so the Vikings don't see if Allen is going to play until closer to game time. So man, they're playing with people's emotions here, man.
Yeah, they're taking to the last second. They need to not do that. We need to have some kind of rule for this whole gambling thing that we do here.
Oh
We
man,
we need to know like at least 24 hours before the game who's playing and who's not,
that's wild. I mean, it would be funny too if like Keenum goes out there on the first snap, hands it off, and then the rest of the game, Josh Allen just plays. That'd be something I would love to see. But your third pick today, man. What are you liking for underdog?
I'm gonna go with Tyler Heineke, lower than 20 or 232 yards, 32 and a half yards. I'm sorry. So lower than 232 and a half total yards, actually. Heineke will be facing a Philly defense that's only given up 219 yards per game to opposing quarterbacks this season. Um, since their bye week in week 7, the Eagles defense held Kenny Pickett and David Mills under this mark. Kenny Pickett only had 228 total yards, and David Mills only had 172 yards total. So they're doing a good job of keeping quarterbacks under that mark there. And then um, in Taylor's 3 starts this season, he's only beat this mark once. So it seems like it's going to be a rough game. And we all know that, Philly is kind of on this run that no one was expecting. So and that defense is solid, dude. So I'm all in on Heineke being lower than 232 and a half total yards.
Yeah, I know Ben behind the scenes here likes you talking good about his Eagles here, but their defense has been solid, 100%. That's no lie there. And Heineke, I mean, 149 yards last game against the Vikings, not great. 201 in Week 7 against the Packers, not great. So two teams that have pretty decent defenses, and now you're playing the Eagles here, who have a stellar defense. So I'm with you. I'm with you. I think he's going to throw the ball a lot, but does that connect to people? They might have Jahan Dotson back, so that's another wide receiver, but it doesn't change the matchup. So I do like that. It's going to be a tougher game today for the Commanders there. Um,
Yeah.
so my third one here, going to stick to one of my guys. I talk about him a lot, but Jerry Jeudy higher than 4 receptions. So across Judy's last 2 games, he's had 18 total targets. He's had 96 and 63 receiving yards. He scored a touchdown in Week 8. This was before their bye. And I mention that because I feel like too often the bye week hits, and then the next week after guys come back, too many people forget player trends, and too many people forget player performances that are heading in the right direction. And that's been Jerry Jeudy, who's been targeted a ton from Russell Wilson. Technically, he's been their wide receiver one in these two games, just looking strictly off of the targets and the performances. So he faces the Titans, who, again, I'm going to mention fantasy stuff just to paint the picture here, but he faces the Titans, who are giving up the third most points per game to wide receivers on the year, also the third most passing yards per game. It's a great matchup. So a guy that's being targeted a lot. He had 2 good games in a row before the bye. I'm going to go higher than 4 receptions for Jerry Jeudy in this game.
Yeah, man. When you said it at first, before I pull up the stats, I was kind of like, Judy kind of fell off my radar just because, man, Russ is killing me this season, dude. Like, it's hard. But yeah, the last couple games, he had 6 receptions, another one with 7. And like you said, he's been targeted. What's that, 18 times in the last 2 games. So that's some good numbers there. Let's see what they can do. And the Titans, they're going to give you a lot of opportunities. That offense kind of a lot of 3 and out. So I think Denver have a lot of extra playing time there just because
Yeah.
they can't stay off the field. So I'm with you on that one. Even though I kind of fell off of all of Detroit. I mean, all of Denver just fell off the radar for
Yeah.
me, dude.
Especially, I mean, like trying to figure out, what running back to play over there. You can't really
It's
play
been a
Russell
mess all
Wilson.
season. All
Man,
season's been a
man.
mess.
Greg Dulcich has been pretty nice. I mean, just for a guy, if you want like 10,
Random
11 fantasy points,
Yeah. Just a
Um,
random guy that no one knows is just coming up being the man there,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. But when it comes to big point with this, when it comes to fantasy, maybe sports betting as well, follow player trends. Guys are going to have a bad week for sure, but if guys are trending in the right direction, pick up on that, because people forget after bye weeks. But we got one more pick from you. What we got? We're going to go 4 for 4 today. Both of
Yeah, I
us.
went so I gave you a running back, gave you a receiver, gave you a quarterback. Let's round it all out. Let's go with a tight end. I'm gonna go with
Let's
Pat
go.
Fairmouth, lower than 43.5 receiving yards. Pat will have a hard task getting open against the Saints defense that's ranked second, only giving up 32 yards per game to tight ends. Um, Only one tight end this season so far has beat this mark versus the Saints, and that was week 5. Um, Noah Fant, 49 yards. So they do a pretty good job of corralling the tight end position. Fairmouth beat this mark 4 out of 8 times so far this season. So he's betting 50% right now. To me, this is a riskier play a little bit because he has beat it, 50% of the time. And you just never know in that Pittsburgh offense. Like, they don't really have like a mainstay. At first we thought the running back was the thing, and they got some receivers out there, but it can go either way. Whatever Kenny Pickett feels is going on, that's what's going to happen. Hopefully he can get back on track. He's been struggling a bit, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Pat Fairmouth, lower than 43.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, I see a line on a different, just sleeper. The sleeper app shows some lines sometimes, and they have his at 41.5. So
Okay.
they have it even lower. So you're saying he's going to be below 43. Another site saying, hey, we got him at 41.5. So that might be another good sign that, hey, a lot of people are kind of looking that way when it comes to him. I think there is some risk, just because Claypool obviously is out of the mix. This is their first game because they had a bye last week without Chase Claypool, even though, he wasn't lighting the world on fire or anything, but he was the second most targeted player in the offense. And
Right.
now, I don't think Deontay gets a huge bump because he already was being targeted at a pretty high rate. I think maybe Freiermuth and Pickens get a bump, but, his yards per catch uh, fluctuate. It's not like he's this huge, field stretching tight end consistently. I mean, he's had some bigger weeks, 20.5 yards per catch in week 3, but then week 2, 5.5, and week 5, 6, so it kind of goes up and down there. And sometimes getting the targets doesn't always equal getting the yardage. Maybe he's
Right.
a touchdown threat today. Maybe he's not gonna, have 100 receiving yards. So I don't mind that. I don't mind that. Um, I got to ask you too. No bias, no bring up the Bears, but Claypool, is he gonna have like a career revival in Chicago. Any thoughts there? Is he going to be about the same?
Nah, I kind of see it working out for him because Fields can toss that rock, man. He can throw that ball downfield, and we all know Claypool is one of those guys who, in his beginning of his career in Pittsburgh, he was big play. He was running those posts, he was running those corners, running seam routes, running those fades. Like, the throw the ball up, he's going to go grab it. So I think he can have a opportunity. Once the Bears kind of open up the offense a little bit more, let Fields throw the ball down the field some. I think he'll be okay. I think he can revive his career out there in Chicago.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because people were knocking the move in the fantasy world because they're like, they don't throw the ball enough in Chicago. There's no passing volume, which is true most of the season. But last week Fields came off of a season high in passing attempts, and my thought that I had too was like maybe they didn't throw the ball because they had terrible wide receivers. I mean, they had
True.
Mooney and a bunch of like random Dante Pettis's and Byron Pringles and just like all these random guys. Maybe they didn't throw the ball a lot because they don't have people to throw to. But I'm sure the volume's not going to be like insane over there. But I do like the move. It's something more fun to watch. Even when a team's losing, they're at least more fun to watch right now. So
I mean, he had 6 targets last week too,
yeah,
so it's like,
right away.
that's some nice numbers, especially for your first game.
Yeah, I feel you there. So
Who you got for your last one, man? Let's round this thing out.
my last one, at least I had one lower today. The rest were higher. Maybe I'll switch next week again. Chris Olave higher than 63.5 receiving yards. So right now, just I keep talking about fantasy, but they go hand in hand sometimes. But tied for wide receiver 15 overall for the fantasy world, which is amazing because even if people liked him coming into the season, I don't think anybody ranked him as a top 15 wide receiver as a rookie. But the last 3 weeks, 14, 7, and 9 targets. He's had 3 games of 13 targets. Jarvis Landry should be back, but I actually think that's better for Chris Olave so that somebody else is like operating more effectively than like Callaway and Traquan Smith and those guys. But a top 10 wide receiver in targets and receiving yards on the year, there's major upside when it comes to Olave. He's number 2 in air yards. He's number 1 in deep targets for the wide receiver position with 19. Pittsburgh is the best fantasy wide receiver matchup for wide receivers, and they give up the second most receiving yards per game. He's hit this 63.5 receiving yard line over it 5 out of 8 games. So I'm still rolling with Chris Olave just because of the upside numbers and what he's done this season in a good matchup.
Yeah, what was the mark one time?
He's 63.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, so I just seen something just popped out to me. I'm looking at his
All right.
last, what is it, 5 games, and he's kind of he's beat it, he didn't beat it, he beat it, he didn't beat it, he beat it last week. So if we continue that trend, most likely he's not going to beat that. Like we said, sometimes you gotta play the trends, you
That's
gotta
true.
see little weird things, you
That's
gotta
true.
find little quirks and stuff like that. So that just kind of popped out to me as you were speaking, but I I'm all in on him, dude. Like
Yeah.
I didn't think he was gonna be. I knew he was gonna be good. I didn't
Yeah.
think he's gonna be this good this fast, especially with Michael Thomas and all those other guys, and Juice Landry there. I thought he was gonna take the backseat a little bit, but those guys have been kind of hurt on and off. So
Yeah.
he's had an opportunity to kind of go in and become the man. But I'm with you. I just seen that little tricky little trend there
Yeah.
with the
Yeah. That's fair. Hey, that's fair.
yeah.
We talked about trends, man. We can't say follow only the good trends, you have to follow both. But yeah, he's been a pleasant surprise. He's been a huge riser in like the dynasty world for sure. And a guy in everybody's lineups right now for fantasy. But again, if you guys are not familiar with the app, go check it out today. Go to the App Store, Underdog Fantasy. Go to your web browser, Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code Fantasy Points, Fantasy PTS for a deposit matchup. Throw $5 on 2 guys hitting one of majors, one of mine, 2 of majors, whatever you want to do. It makes Sundays more fun. Major, anything else before we close out this show heading into the rest of the Week 10 games?
No, I think we kind of put some good ones out there. I think we're gonna be about 1,000 this week. Also, man, I like the questions from the week before. Man, let's get some of these questions going, guys. Keep the questions coming.
Yeah, we'll have to quote tweet the promo for it and say, hey, at the end of the show, toss us a couple questions and we'll answer. But hopefully you guys win some money today. Good luck in your fantasy football matchups and enjoy this Sunday, week 10.